Now, in Seinfeld, there are many famous fan theories. Kramer being a widower, Newman being able to save the four of them in the finale, even one that George intentionally killed Susan. However, I want to talk about the darkest and probably the most infamous theory, George's brother. Now, the theory goes that George's brother kills himself during or after Season 3 Episode 15, named, of course, The Suicide.
With you?
He jumped. What? Huh? Newman jumped.
Did he call you last night?
Yeah.
The reason this theory started is that in that episode 15 of Season 3, George visits a psychic in which he is reminded of a woman named Pauline, who reminds George of his brother.
It's Pauline.
Pauline? Wait a minute. Oh my God. My brother once impregnated a woman named Pauline.
Now, this is quite interesting due to the fact it's never really ever mentioned all that much that George even has a brother in the first place. Now, the main idea is that because of being reminded of his brother, he calls him up, and then due to this, it, guilt trips his brother into killing himself. This theory is backed largely due to the fact the episode's name is The Suicide, but no suicide happens during the episode, which makes this theory much more plausible. The idea is backed up by the fact in the next episode, which similarly involves a pregnancy, wherein George believes he impregnated a woman on a one-night stand and vows to look after the baby, which of course is uncharacteristic for George, suggesting some sort of guilt or reminder of his brother. And at the start of the episode, George does seem somewhat angry, frustrated, and somewhat depressed.
Why even try anymore? There's no sense to it. I'm never gonna meet anybody. I should just accept it.
Oh, yes, you will.
No, I won't.
Another piece of evidence is in the same season, that being Season 3, the only time George's brother is ever mentioned. He mentions nobody in his family can pay for parking, in which, mentioning his brother, he seems quite proud.
Nobody in my family can pay for parking. It's a sickness. My father never paid for parking. My mother, my brother, nobody. We can't do it.
Now, that is all the mentions of his brother, but one thing that does seem to kind of make this theory quite plausible is in which the ways George's parents essentially mistreat him. This theory chalking this up to, in large part, them feeling George is the cause of his brother's death, and would explain why there's an extra seat in the Costanza house. And the only other kind of major piece of evidence to back this theory up is the fact the show had a mantra of no hugging, no learning, which would enable this development to happen outside of the show, and I think shows us as to why George was quite apathetic towards Susan during her death.
Hey, what can I tell you?
All right.
Come on, let's get some coffee.
However, the theory does have some evidence against it. First of all, it's never mentioned that George's brother did die, which of course would probably be mentioned by at least one of the characters. Next is the fact it's quite headcanon-y. Now that doesn't mean it didn't happen, however some of it is quite circumstantial evidence, which could just be coincidence.
I mean, would it kill you not to be so funny all the time? That's all I'm asking. This woman thinks I'm very funny, and now you're gonna be funny, so what am I gonna be?
Now despite that, I do think the theory does have some credence towards it, and would explain why the Costanzas are so dysfunctional. And overall, I do believe it's possible. While not 100% on it, the theory, it makes much more sense. Quite a lot of sense in fact, and fits with the tragedy of the show.
Serenity now! Serenity now!
What is that?
Doctor gave me a relaxation cassette. When my blood pressure gets too high, the man on the tape tells me to say, Serenity now!